The Raptors roller coaster of a season continues, and after going all in at this year's trade deadline, giving away lots of draft capital, future draft capital to acquire Jakob Poeltl, picking up Will Barton at the buyout deadline, it did excite a lot of Toronto Raptors fans, myself included. Toronto's now lost 4 of their last 5 games, in the bottom of the middle of the pack in the Eastern Conference, in the worst possible position a team can be in, at least in a single year in the standings. So a lot of Raptors fans are calling out, saying Masai Ujiri's plan is failing, we should just tank. Other fans are calling for a deep playoff push, not to get worried. So we'll take a look at all of that in this video, including the lost LA Lakers, as well as other Toronto Raptors news involving Fred VanVleet, Giannis, Antetokounmpo, and a whole bunch more. So without further ado, let's jump to the first topic of discussion. The first thing we're taking a look at is the Raptors bench brutal in a loss to the Lakers, and where the Toronto Raptors are just at right now. Unfortunately, couldn't get a reaction to the Lakers game yesterday. I apologize for that. The later games, busy weekend and stuff. But the Raptors, while the game did have some positives, and let's just get those out of the way first. Scottie Barnes, career high, remarkable. The offense was running through him. The starting lineup was really effective. Scottie always plays pretty well against the LA Lakers. Shows up on the big lights. 32 points, 9 rebounds, 7 assists, 3 of 19 from the field. 13 of 19 from the field. Just a really big performance from Scottie Barnes. And OG Anunoby also had a big night as well. Looking at the box score, 31 points, knocked down 4 of 6 from the three-point line, was cooking really well. Mikal Bridges was out here praising him on Twitter, had 5 steals in this game as well. So, really strong performances from those two players. Great stuff. That starting unit was great. We talked about Jakob Poeltl as well, briefly touching him in the intro. Poeltl, I thought, was pretty solid in this game as well. 17 points, 10 rebounds, doing his thing out there. Can make a few more of those bunnies, but 8 of 17 from the field. You're not going to complain about that. Pascal was a bit rough. Fred VanVleet, once again, had not a big night, big showing. Look at their box scores there. 12 points, 8 rebounds. But the starting unit itself, right, you don't need big nights from Pascal or Fred VanVleet. They didn't take a lot of shots when you have guys like Scottie Barnes and OG Anunoby cooking like that. The only thing about this game especially, the rest of the Toronto Raptors team was just abysmal. Sure, Will Barton had a decent enough stat line, right? 5 points on 2 of 3 shooting. Didn't have a massive impact in 14 minutes. It's a minus 18 for the game, right? Boucher had Precious had 5. Boucher had 2. That only got 4 minutes, but our guy off the bench, and while we all called, especially that first season, right? Gary Trent Jr. needs to be a starter. He plays way better as a starter, right? Like, it doesn't make sense to bring him off the bench. His game is suited off the bench, in terms of an elite bucket getter. And while his numbers can dip a little bit, right? All that sort of stuff, and it might be reasonable for everyone to say, oh, he plays better. Like, this is unacceptable for Gary Trent Jr. to be dropping this bad of duds in his games off the bench. Now, he has had a couple big performances coming off the pine and stuff, but the inconsistency he's shown in this sort of role right now, at least over the past couple weeks, has not been a good look. It's just not been effective for this Raptors team. There's hope with acquiring Jakob Poeltl. The bench would improve as Gary Trent Jr. be able to bring some firepower off of there. Precious Achiuwa will be able to provide some decent, consistent impact, hopefully consistent impact in his more defined role and all that sort of stuff. But Precious, again, wasn't too great. He's not providing that much impact on the defensive end either. So he only played 8 minutes in this game as well. 2 of 5 from the field. Right, Nick Nurse has been outspoken about his defense not being up to par. And the Lakers, sure, they're fine. They're making a push in the Western Conference. This is a game that we really should be able to win. And the lack of floor spacing is just killing us, especially with these bench lineups, right? If Boucher can't consistently knock him down, Precious can't. And then even our Gary Trent Jr. coming off our bucket getter, our elite 3-point snipers, not hitting them on a night-by-night basis. Like, we're not going to win any single game, right? We're not going to win any of these games. And I get the mental side of basketball and the vibes just being off with this team and stuff, and I like Gary Trent Jr.'s attitude in terms of coming off the bench. He said all the right things to Nick Nurse. I like how he bounced back earlier in the season when he was benched earlier in the year, but he's going to have to not go. Where did he go? 0 for 9? 0 for 9 in this game. 0 points for Gary Trent Jr., right? Like, we're not going to win any single games if that's going to be the case. And that's just been the problem with this Raptors team. Not just Gary Trent Jr., but we have some big nights from some of our players, and then we can't get any level of production from the other guys out there if the other guys aren't cooking. Now, a problem with that, a product of that is the Raptors sort of system, right? We tend to just really roll with the hot hand, You don't know who's going to get their touches any given night. And while sure, that sounds great in a vacuum and all that sort of stuff, hey, whoever's rolling, whoever's cooking, you have 6 guys that could be your number 1 scorer on any given night. But then, if Gary Trent Jr. is used to getting his 15 shots per game or a lot of touches or the ball in his hands a bunch, right? Because there's some nights when Gary's cooking, he's allowed to isolate, create in that high midi post, or well, in the 3-point, create mid-range jump shots for himself. Not really mid-poster. He's not hitting Kobe fades by any means, but he does create those dribble pull-ups for him in the mid-range, right? He's able to sort of have the ball in his hands and get that touch going. But then when we have especially guys like Scotty and OG playing at a high level, guys, they will eclipse Gary Trent Jr. in sort of the pecking order in terms of touches, right? Then Gary sort of regulate to a spot-up shooter, not touching the ball a lot the entire game, and Gary's a guy who likes to have a feel for the ball, right? Run these isolations, and that's what really Scotty, it's what OG's doing, that's what Pascal's doing, and even Fred. Our top 6 guys, even Precious Achiuwa likes to make his dribble drives, get a bunch of dribble, pound the air out of the basketball to make his takes, and when that's your style of play, right? When that's how you sort of get your game going, it's not really conducive. Even if Pascal's improved his playmaking, even if Fred VanVleet is capable of, making some dimes here and there and stuff, right? If the ball is not in a player's hands, no matter how many shots they're explicitly getting, right? Gary's not a JJ Redick. He needs sort of the ball in his hands in these sorts of areas. And if we have too many guys that sort of do the same things, get their shots going the same ways, and it's not conducive to other play styles, you're going to have these up and down nights. And it's a big reason why the Raptors just can't stay consistent. It's a big reason why the Toronto Raptors just can't have 4 players really play well together the same way a team like the Golden State Warriors could. Because Klay Thompson, while he's an all-star, superstar, NBA legend, all that sort of stuff, right? He doesn't need to dribble the air out of the basketball. He can catch and shoot. That's how his game is built, right? Curry, Durant, they can sort of play off of other players if other guys are cooking. And the Toronto Raptors, all of our guys sort of need to, really dribble the basketball, exception of Jakob Poeltl now at this point, right? It just isn't really fitting. And, part of it's just the inconsistency in terms of shooting, right? We need our guys to be able to knock down more shots. But, you look at the Lakers, their team is able to knock down shots because their players have defined roles. They might be, getting to dribble a lot, take a lot of isolation drives one night, and then be able, that's not the case. That's what's happening. And then the other nights, they're just shooting deep threes and all that sort of stuff. The Toronto Raptors, it's just a weird sort of situation. It's really my sort of takeaway because everyone talks about the vibes being bad and all of that sort of stuff. OG wanting out for a bigger role and all the talk that we heard leading into the trade deadline. I think a big reason why that's the case is, because people are saying, OG's getting a lot of shots. He has a decent usage rate, but night in, night out, it's really unpredictable what's going to happen. And then if you're not getting those consistent run, the ball in your hands consistently, you don't really have that clearly defined role, then it's hard to be consistent. And it's tough, and that's why it's tough for Masai Ujiri to get rid of some of our guys, because they're really talented in a vacuum, but the team is just not fitting right now, and we got to figure something like that out. And that's just a little rant, 8 minutes into this video. It was the big thing I really want to say, takeaway coming from this game and stuff, and the Raptors really have to figure this out fast, because you look at the current schedule we have ahead of us, playing the top-seeded Denver Nuggets again. OKC has been cooking lately. The Timberwolves have quietly been really good. The Bucks, the top team in the Eastern Conference, they just don't seem to lose anymore. Right? The Pacers have Halliburton back, so they're no pushover. Right? The Pistons are maybe the one team that we have that are, to close out the season that might be an easier W. The Hornets have even been getting wins lately, but there are no easy wins to close out the season. While the Raptors have had some good games with Jakob Poeltl, and he is a huge plus to this team, we need to make a push, right? We need to make a push. We're going to be making that play-in spot because the Eastern Conference, we are literally only a game up of the Pacers of being out of the 12th seed, right? That's where the Toronto Raptors are currently situated. We have a very tough schedule to close out the year, so the Raptors are really going to have to get their consistency straight, rotation straight. Nick Nurse is going to have everyone organized, so we're going to fall out of that play-in picture. And now that's what some people are actually calling for because the Tankathon standings, right? If you look at the other way, we get to that Pacer spot, then we have a 9% shot at Wembanyama, close to 40% chance at a top 4 pick. Some people really want that. So, I don't know. The worst sort of spot that we can be in if we are, fall a couple seeds, we're not in the play-in, we don't actually have a shot at the pick. I don't really know what the Toronto Raptors could do at this point, but even though the team does look better with an actual center, it's clearly been a liability on the squad this entire year. It hasn't fixed all of our issues, as I've aforementioned, the consistency, all that, and Masai Ujiri's plan seems like it's failing in the worst possible way. We tanked. Maybe we could have had a guaranteed top 5 shot at Wembanyama. And if we do get Wembanyama, right, what happens with Jakob Poeltl? I guess it's not guaranteed. You can't bank on that. Poeltl has been such a great pickup for this team. And if we get Wembanyama, it's a win in itself, right? We can let go of Poeltl, whatever we want to do with things. But I don't know. Let me know what you guys think the Toronto Raptors should do down below. A little bit of a rant video there, a little bit of a disjointed take. But I think all Toronto Raptors fans are a little bit just... don't know what to say about this Raptors team at this point. But the next thing we're taking a look at is the Raptors trade deadline graded a C. Bleacher Report came out and essentially gave their rankings in terms of where the Toronto Raptors trade deadline should be graded. And they had a lot of stuff to say in regards to the situation. Basically saying, they've been maybe someday vindicated the positionless basketball, but it hasn't really worked before Poeltl arrived. We weren't that great in terms of opponent shots that came at the rim. We couldn't protect the rim. We couldn't really defend in that sense at all. And then the 6-4 record with Poeltl in the last 10 games has made an immediate impact. Unfortunately, right, the Raptors are on the hook for Poeltl's contract, all the stuff, this free agency with Gary Trent Jr., Fred VanVleet being available and all that sort of stuff. And now, after a few extra losses since this article was posted, we were given the grade of a C. I think that's probably the right place to put it. Even though long-term, I think Poeltl is a really nice piece to have on this team. Maybe you don't get him out there on the free agency market, but I don't know. It's tough. And it probably puts us in a position where we're going to get rid of Gary, maybe, because I don't think there's I don't know what's going to happen. We're going to let Fred VanVleet walk, but we definitely confused our off-season situation, so lots of stuff's going to be coming out that, just like it did during this trade deadline. But let me know what you guys think about the Raptors trade deadline with a little bit of hindsight to look back on. And also, I was late to the party on this, but Fred VanVleet's fine was revealed, and it's kind of opened the door for, I feel like, some other NBA players to really go at officials, because Fred VanVleet had some harsh words for Ben Oliver, the referee, that he's always given Fred VanVleet texts and stuff. We covered in the last video, but news came out that pushing the wrong picks. But Fred VanVleet has been fined $30,000 for comments about the NBA's officiating on Wednesday night. Only $30,000 for Fred VanVleet for everything that he had to say is pretty wild in my opinion. So don't be surprised if this sort of leads to a domino effect where a lot of NBA players start really going at the NBA referees. So we'll see what happens there. But shout out to Fred VanVleet for speaking his mind, not having to pay too much for it. The final thing is the one thing keeping me sane in Toronto Raptors land right now is Giannis Antetokounmpo singing "No Canada" in a practice facility. It's going viral a little bit. I didn't bring up the clip from Bucks Reddit, but Giannis was caught singing "No Canada" at a Bucks practice. It was towards Lindell Wigington, but a lot of Raptors fans have sort of been running with it. And, we were obviously big pushers of the Giannis 2021 propaganda out here on our YouTube channel, but maybe 2026. Lindell Wigington can get him to push. Shout out to the Atlantic provinces, East Coast, baby, getting that cooking out there. But, folks, you guys are the best to make this far. Subscribe to the Raptors side just so you want to keep up to date with everything regarding the Toronto Raptors. Anyways, I'm signing out. Cheers.